Hey everyone, welcome back to our SwiftUI series. Today we're tackling localization in SwiftUI. This is the process of preparing your app for international markets. You'll learn how to use localized strings, format date and numbers for different regions, as well as dynamically update text. Let's go ahead and dive on in. I'm just going to create a basic template example here, but if you want to add this to any of your existing projects, feel free to do so as well. So I'm just going to call it localization example SwiftUI. Make sure my language is on SwiftUI and we can go ahead and get started. Alrighty, before we go ahead and start changing our content view, we're going to need to create a new file. We're actually going to be using the localizable strings. So I'm just going to adjust my Xcode so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to press the plus button in the bottom here, and I'm going to select new file from template. And from here, we're going to scroll down until we see the string catalog. You can also use the filter here. Search string. We have the string catalog. Let's go ahead and hit next. And we can give it a name. I'm just going to keep it as the default localizable, but if you want to change it, feel free to do so. Alrighty, so we can see here that we have English, and we can even press on the plus button at the bottom to add any more languages. So I'm going to go ahead and add Korean, which is represented by KO, and I can also add, let's add Spanish for our example, which I believe is ES. Right down here. We can see that we have English, Korean, and Spanish. You can also change the languages that your app supports by clicking on the app icon itself, clicking on the project here, so project localization example, whatever yours is called. And you can see here that there's a localizations tab. You might just need to open it up under info, and you can see we have base, English, Korean, Spanish. And you can also add them here. If you can't find what you want, there is a more languages tab at the bottom. So you should be able to kind of find all of those, and the kind of 2 or 3 letters within that bracket is how they are represented. So for English, it's EN, Korean's KO, Spanish, I believe is ES. So you'll be needing to reference those tags later, and you can always check what they are here. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a welcome message. We're going to add a choose lesson string, and also a button that will later on have the user be able to update or change their language. So I'm going to get rid of the sample kind of VStack that we have here. I'm going to add some text using the text keyword. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to reference a localized string key. We can make that key. So I'm going to say localized string key, capital L, S, and K. And then we're going to include a string within some brackets. So you can kind of think of this like what we're going to be referring to the key as, almost like saving a file. So I'm going to call this one welcome underscore message. Oops, sorry, not bracket, welcome underscore. There we go. This will display localized text. Right now, it's just showing that welcome underscore message, but I'll show you in a couple seconds how we can update that with our localizable string file. We also give it some properties. We'll give it maybe large title and multi-line text arrangement, and let's go ahead and center that with the dot center. All right, let's then add another text that's going to say choose language. So I'll say text. I'll do the exact same thing, localized string key. And then we can say choose underscore language. And then we can add a button. We'll add a button. And we'll go ahead and say action. Our action here. Add our brace, add some space. And this is where we're going to print out the language preference tapped. Later on, we're going to add some functionality here that's going to update what the language is within the app itself. So I'm just going to add a print here. So we know that it works. And then after the bracket, let's go ahead and add some text. Then after the bracket, we're going to add a brace. And this is where we can add our text, the properties of the button. We'll create one more localized string key. And then from here, we'll say change language button. We'll wrap that up in the brackets. and then add a background color. So background color dot purple, or whatever color you want. We can also have the foreground style be white. And let's also add some corner radius here. Do 25. And let's add a little bit of padding. So dot padding. All right, so we have our basic UI setup. And if we want to change what these are showing to the users, we need to make sure that we're changing our localizable file. So I'm going to go back here, and we can see that we have an empty string catalog. If I go ahead and press plus, this is where we can add in our keys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to copy and paste our string from the welcome message here. Let's go back to my localizable, and under where it says key here, I'm going to paste it, and that's our welcome message. And this is where we can change in the English portion what it's going to say in English. So I'll say welcome to our app. You can also add a comment, in case you forgot what it's supposed to say or something like that in your native language, or what it does. Let's go ahead and repeat that process. So we have our welcome message, we have our choose language, select your language, and then we'll also grab our change language button. All right, cool. And now you'll see if you go to Korean or Spanish or the other languages that you've selected, you can see that we have our default localization. So in this case, English, and then we have the Korean version of it. So I actually don't know Korean or Spanish really well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly Google Translate this. So Google Translate, as I have it open up on my other monitor here. Alrighty, and you'll notice it might be a little bit hard to see. If I actually select on Spanish, it might be easier. But next to Korean, we have this little check mark here saying that all the keys that have been added now have a Korean corresponding message. I'm also just going to update it in Spanish really quickly as well. Alrighty, if you are a native Spanish or Korean speaker and Google Translate did a terrible job, I apologize. You might have someone on your team do a better job of localization than Google Translate. So now what we should be able to do is, based off the language of our application, we should be able to see an updated message. Because our preview is running in English, you can see that it now says welcome to our app, select your language, and change your language. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually change that language within the simulator. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my app. All right, and we can see welcome to our app, change your language. So if we want to change this on the simulator, the easiest way to do that is to actually press on the home button at the top, go to settings. From here, we're going to go to general. Then we're going to go to language and region. And you can see that I already have some different languages added. If you want to add a new language, you'll just press the add language button. So for example, if I wanted to add French Canadian, I can press it there and say, would you like to use French Canadian as your primary language? You can update it here. It might just take a second to restart the phone. And then we can see here that our phone is now in a different language. Because we have our supported for Korean and for Spanish, let's go ahead and try it in Korean. It's a good idea to also, look at what these symbols are in your native language before actually swapping it. If you do want to swap it, you'll grab the kind of 3 lines here and you'll drag it to the top. It's going to ask us, hey, do you want to change and update your iPhone? You can press the continue button. Make sure your simulator doesn't get stuck in a language you're unfamiliar with. All right, and I'm just going to go back to our app here, and we can see we don't even have to restart it. It's still running, and it's updated to be Korean. And because we also had Spanish, let's go ahead and check that out. Let's grab the Espanol. Let's restart our phone. And let's go back to our app. Cool. But what happens if we go and we swap it to something that's not supported? So let's do Japanese, as we did not include that. It's just going to go to whatever it was prior. So in this case, last time we tested it was Spanish, so it's going to stay on Spanish. All right, but that's a little bit annoying, right? Especially if the user has to, kind of come back and update it. What if we just, made an option within the app to actually select the different language? So I'm just going to put mine back on English so I can use my simulator. That's the language that I primarily use. And let's go ahead and hop back on into our content view to see how that we can update our language using environment. Alrighty, so for those advanced cases, we can use SwiftUI's at environment to handle dynamic language switching without even restarting the app. So in this case, we'll have our button, let's have it swap to be Spanish. So what we can do is we can create a new class. So above my structure and under my import of SwiftUI, I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call it language manager. We're going to have this conform to be an observable object. Right, if you want to learn a little bit more about observable objects, you can use our option click. So this is a type alias for the Combine framework's type for an object with a publisher that emits before the object has changed. We're going to add our brace here, and we're going to create an @published variable, and we'll call it current language. And we can set it to equal a string. So remember earlier when we were talking about the different languages that we're adding. So we go back here and press the plus button. You can see within these brackets. So for example, Danish is DA. This is where you can reference the kind of alias that the languages are known for. So Spanish is going to be ES, English is EN. When the user launches our app, let's go ahead and have it be set to EN by default. This is going to default to English. If you want to have a default on something else, maybe you're a native French speaker, right? You would use like FR for that example. All right, now let's create a function in this class. We'll call it set language. So here we're going to do within the brackets, we're going to do underscore language. We're going to say that this is a string value. We'll add our brace, and then we'll have our current language equals language. So whatever we refer to within those parameters. And then we're going to actually use the user defaults. I'm going to say user defaults dot standard dot set. And then from here, we're going to create an array of language. Outside of the square brackets, we're going to say for key. And we're going to add a colon, space, and then capital A, Apple, capital L, languages. Okay, and then this is going to basically save our language under the Apple languages. And then we can have our user defaults dot standard dot synchronize. So this is going to basically update and synchronize the app. So we're going to save it and we're going to update it, and then it's going to like refresh. Essentially, that's what we're doing. So now within our button, let's go ahead and have this swap to Spanish. Under our structure, we're going to create a @state object. Remember we had that observable object above there. We're going to say private variable, and we'll say language manager with a lowercase l, and we're going to have this equal the capital language manager with the brackets. Now when we go to our button, you can do this under the print statement, you can delete it, we can reference our lowercase language manager, and we're going to say dot set language. So we're going to call upon that function, and we need to give it a string, which is a language found within the Apple languages. So in this case, ES for Spanish. So updates to Spanish. If you don't want to have this be a button, if you want it to be, on/off switches to have, or even a segmented controller to have the user select their language, I'm just using a button for the simplest example. And now what we need to do is we should go to our welcome message here. So our text localized string key, we're going to actually add another property, and we're going to say dot environment, and we're going to use the object here. We're just going to delete our placeholder. We're going to do / dot locale, comma, capital L, locale, and then we're going to have the identifier, and then we're going to reference our language manager dot current language. So this is going to check the environment that we are updating. through our user defaults, and it's going to grab the locale, which is another word for like localization. And for the identifier, we're grabbing that from the current language that we've created elsewhere. So now when we press this button, it should update our app to be in Spanish, and we can see that it does. Let's go ahead and also update the select your language. So we can actually just grab that .environment. And if we also wanted to change the button as well. So now when we press the change your language, it's going to update all 3 instances of those text to be for Spanish. And if we were to change this to be KR, I think it was KR, or maybe it's KO. Let's go ahead and check real quick. Oh, sorry, it's KO for Korean. Then you can see that it updates our entire app to be in Korean as well. You can have this be localizable for as many languages as you want, but that's how you can do it within the app without having the user change the entire language of their iPhone. If you're helping someone learn a new language, this might be a good way to do that without them committing, the entire language of their phone. If I change my phone to Korean, had to go find some settings, I would have a really tough time. I might have to like reboot my iPhone. So that's how you can do it. So we use that language manager class. We can dynamically switch the languages in the app, and that'll be through a button. You can control how you want that logic to go. So one other thing to consider is also the localization of currency or even numbers and dates. So I'm actually going to create a new Swift file. So I'm going to do new file from template, and I'm going to do a SwiftUI view, and I'm going to call this one date and number formats. Alrighty, I'm also just going to change this to open up date and number formats instead of our previous example. Okay, so what we can do is we can have some text, and we can reference the date as well as add our localization. So here, I can create a text. And within this text, let's go have the date with a capital D. So this is a specific point in time, independent of any calendar or time zone. And we can actually use the .now property, so it represents that moment in time. We can then say comma format, and then we can add our colon, and we can do .date time, .day, .month, .year. So this is going to have localized date formats. And we can also do the exact same thing with numbers. So if you're dealing with things like currency, if you're dealing with a way that different localizations write their numbers, we can do that as well. So we can do text. We can do text here. And within this text box, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.67. And let's go ahead and format that once again. So comma format. For this one, we can have it be currency. So I'll do currency code, and then we can actually do locale.current .currency question mark .identifier, and then we can provide it with a fallback. I think it does require a fallback. Yep, so we need to use that nil coalescing operator, so the double question mark. And let's do CAD for Canadian dollars if we don't have what their localization is. So this is essentially going to be for localized currency. So even though our language is currently set to be Korean from our other view, because we are using the English or localized kind of numbers in the simulator, it's going to show USD. So let's go ahead and swap this over to something else, and we can see how that looks. So I'm going to run the simulator real quick. All right, and because our phone is in Korean, because we did update it with the button, and it does save it under the user defaults, now when we launch this app, it does have it in Korean. You can see on the simulator here, because it doesn't use the user defaults, it's actually displaying that with a $sign because it's using the fallback there, which is kind of funny. So you can use this to localize any currency. If you're, you have people coming to your app shopping from Korea, you can show them in the correct dollar symbols, as well as, from Canadian, CAD. You can also use this to display the date. You can see here that we do have that 2024, 12, 11, because that's how the date is formatted where different people are from. Like, for instance, I know in France, they use the 24-hour clock. Here, we use the 12-hour AM, PM. So totally up to you. But you can, choose to have the users localize their app through the kind of Apple languages and updating the user defaults, or you can just have it be reactive based on what language the user has their phone in. Again, you can use that localizable strings to update it. If we were to add another key here, you'll notice that now the Korean and Spanish are only 75% complete. So you can use that percentage or those check markers to make sure that your app is localizable for as many people as possible. And that's it. Today we explored how to localize SwiftUI's apps with text, dates, and numbers, as well as even dynamically updating it based on the environment. Localization ensures that your app is ready for global audiences, improving accessibility and user experience. You should probably have things translated, not just from Google Translate. I've heard some horror stories about what people have said with that. Apple Translate's pretty good. So thank you so much for watching, and remember, dream big and code bigger. Take care, everyone.